You are listening to Armchair Healthcare, a podcast on pills, placebos, and policy.
All right, welcome to Armchair Healthcare. How you doing, Max? What are we going to talk about this week?
First, I want to make sure that I say a disclaimer, because nothing we say is meant as investment or medical advice. It's just our own stupid opinions.
Yes, so please, listen and subscribe, but don't take us too seriously.
Yes, talk to your investment or medical professionals before doing anything, and don't listen to us. So anyway, so we have a few things to talk about this time. This morning I got kind of my dander up a little bit. Now, I really like the folks at Stat. I'm a Stat Plus subscriber, happy with that. I actually think that, more people should be subscribing to it. It's quality
Stat
publication.
News.
Yeah, Stat News. But there was an article this morning about how there's a company that is trying to develop a treatment for cervical lesions, and they feel that they're getting short shrift from male physicians and male VCs when they're trying to kind of develop this drug. I don't say there's not necessarily bias, because there are a lot of companies that have exited women's health or aren't developing things very actively, but cervical lesions is probably the last disease I would complain about, because there are some very, very good options. I mean, the reason this company is probably having trouble getting funding is because the market's really tough. If you look at the data, so there's a lot of surgical therapies out there. They're generally over 90% efficacy. Whenever someone tries to develop a drug for this, which this company's trying to do, it's always far, far less than that. And the article states that while the surgical therapies might be efficacious, there's all these risks associated with them. And while it's true, it depends on which one you're talking about. There's one which is called LEAP, which stands for Loop Electrosurgical Excision Procedure. That one's like 91 to 98% efficacious, but there is a higher risk of preterm labor, which is a legitimate concern for anyone with, in childbearing years, want to have kids in the future. But you could always go with cryotherapy, which really doesn't have that risk and still has between 77 and 93% efficacy and is a 10-minute procedure. Mm-hmm. And I think all of these procedures are like less than $1,000. So, I mean, you take all this into account, as well as the fact that the market over the long term will be shrinking because of the wonders of Gardasil, which is a nice HPV vaccine. I think any VC who's just kind of objectively interested in making money will kind of be a little bit wary of this.
Yeah, I mean, this bothers me because I feel like in a lot of respects, women's health has been underserved historically, but I'm not sure this isn't exactly a case of that. And I think really just going out there and claiming that there's some sort of discriminatory practice really doesn't do anyone justice, right? If you're actually looking to improve women's health and you actually care about this, just randomly claiming because it serves your own interests that somebody is discriminating against you really doesn't advance that agenda, right? Which is, I think, something that we should all care about, because historically, a lot of women's issues have been sort of chalked up to women being hysterical or women, not controlling X, Y, or Z, or they just haven't been as prioritized as they could have been, as male health issues have. I think HPV in general is, in many respects, the exception to that. It's actually been pretty well studied. There's a fair number of procedures that work well. We didn't need an HPV or a cervical cancer foundation to sort of get there. We've been doing this for quite a while. And the pap smear was invented, I don't know how many years ago, and it's really been a huge leap forward for women's health. So I just don't like any company using these sort of tactics to shift the buck to somebody else, and especially when they shift that buck to a sort of poorly defined discriminatory, aspect of society. Any given drug, you can't make the claim, we're just being discriminated against. You actually have to look at how well it works against everything else that's out there.
Just because I've done a lot of work in this space, I know that this is a really tough market. The chances of you developing a drug that is works as well and is as cheap as the surgical procedures are almost zero. It's not exactly an unmet need if you find something that costs more and works less well.
Yes, and we should point out this was a topical treatment, right? So this is a topical treatment that's only going to be able to really address some of those outer layers. If you have some invasive form of this cancer, already this drug isn't going to work as well, right? And really, if you have superficial cervical cancer, probably surgery is going to be your best option. In general, for most cancers, surgery is your best option, almost universally. And at least it's the first option, even if it won't address the whole problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, generally it's better if you scoop things out than treat it with some systemic drug or a topical drug. I mean, you just want to get rid of it. And that works for a variety of different cancers. If you get it if you're diagnosed when the cancer's early and you can just take it out with a scalpel, cure rates are much, much higher. Well, speaking of maybe not the best ideas for drug development, there was a company, Realm, which came out with data for eczema, actually atopic dermatitis is the official indication.
Which is like a major form of eczema.
Yes. Their product is high concentration hypochlorous acid.
Okay, so this makes me crazy. And I've gotten into fights with companies about this before. Hypochlorous acid is bleach. This is bleach. And they'll say, no, it's not bleach. Bleach is sodium hypochlorite. But the fact is, you mix sodium hypochlorite with water and you generate hypochlorous acid, right? You get a mixture of the hypochlorite anion and hypochlorous acid in solution, right? So this is for all intents and purposes the same freaking molecules are involved as bleach. So this is bleach.
Yes, and I have eczema, and the last thing I think I would want to put on any kind of rash would be a bleach-like substance.
Where's your eczema, Max?
It's just usually on my hands or something, sometimes on my face, whatever.
Oh, that's a little disappointing.
Where did you want it to be?
I wanted something juicy for the
like intraascular eczema?
Intraascular. I wanted you to be embarrassed. That's what I wanted.
No, it's just whatever. But get it in the winter, like I think most people. But I mean, you kind of want like look, the steroid creams with the petroleum jelly, they really work really well.
Well, you don't want to use steroids too much, especially for something that's generally mild, like this condition is.
Well, no, but you don't want to use it on any place where your skin is thin already, because it does thin the skin. So you don't want to do it around your eye. And I have had eczema around my eye, and it's really annoying. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I'd want to put bleach near my eye either. Well,
there is a company out there where that is their entire premise. NWBO, have you heard of NWBO?
Yeah, I think I have heard of them.
It's wipes filled with hypochlorous acid.
That's a brilliant idea.
That you use on your eyes to clean them, to prevent blepharitis. It's annoying. But yeah, don't put bleach in your eyes, guys. It's not a good idea.
No. And I'm assuming this drug probably isn't selling.
The last I checked, it wasn't selling very well.
Yeah. Guess what? People don't like using bleach on their eyes. Mm-hmm. Or for their eczema, probably. I mean, it didn't work anyway, but...
Well, say what you will about bleach. It is a very effective antimicrobial, which is probably what they're going after, means... And I've seen claims of other things that hypochlorous acid is doing, like in the body...
Upregulating, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. And I don't want that molecule going into my body at all. It's a strong oxidizing agent. It's going to mess all sorts of things up. And so you'll see all sorts of effects from something that acts like a hammer like this. Yeah, it'll upregulate all sorts of interleukins and stuff like that because it's making crap go haywire.
Great, perfect.
And yeah, it will probably disinfect your skin really effectively. And in some people, they probably have some fungal infection that's driving their dermatitis.
I think that's probably a very small percentage.
I don't know. You'd be surprised.
I mean, it's kind of like an autoimmune kind of thing, probably usually. Just sort of inflammation, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a fair number of skin conditions driven by just growth of like yeast.
Well, the next one they're
Understand.
going after is they're going after psoriasis.
Oh.
Oh, and previously this company they tried it in conjunctivitis, so pink eye. So they were doing a topical bleach solution for pink eye, and now they're going to go into they failed that. They failed here in eczema, and now they're going to go into psoriasis.
And I guess it will. Yeah, it could work for pink eye because it is bleach. It will turn it from red to white. That's how you fix your stuff after you get a red sock in your whites. Same thing. You have all your white shirts, your undershirts, they all come out pink, and you have to bleach them again. So same idea.
Oh, great.
But yeah, guys, stop using bleach as a medicine. That'd be great.
Unless you're just like washing your hands or something. I don't know.
No, don't wash
Bleaching
your hands
your
in
hair.
bleach. No, we're not doing medical advice anymore, Max. Don't
Oh, yeah, I
wash your
forgot.
hands in bleach.
Well, no,
Everyone don't listen to Max. That's a bad idea.
Well, no, that's not medical advice.
That's bad advice in general. That's bad advice for life. And while you're at it, guys, cut it out with the hydrogen peroxide too. Hydrogen peroxide is also not a drug.
Yes, I believe the company Aclaris just got approval for their 40% concentration of hydrogen peroxide for keratosis.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Just burn
Burn
that
it right
lesion
off.
off you.
I've gotten 30% hydrogen peroxide on my skin before, and it does burn a bit.
Gotta burn that scar right off of your skin.
Is that their new jingle?
Yes.
It's like it sounds like Let's Go Out to the Lobby by the Walking Candy.
Well, it was in South Pacific, the movie. I gotta wash that man right out of my hair, and then they turned it into a jingle for like Prel, the shampoo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where that's coming from. So while we're on the topic of crappy companies, I do have to bring up my favorite crappy company.
Uh-oh. Tesla?
No, that's on the ban list.
Tesla's on the ban list.
Yeah, that's on the ban list. We've talked about it enough and whatever. So Northwest Bio. So I remember last week I talked about it, if you want some comic relief, to listen to an Ampio Pharmaceuticals call. Same goes for the Northwest Bio 10Q. Their balance sheet is probably the most horrible one I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
As of June 30th, at least, they have $1.6 million in cash, almost no other current assets, but $98.5 million in current liabilities, while they're burning about $8 million a quarter.
How are they still managing to burn $8 million? This is what I don't get about this company. So, okay, so they've been running this trial that's not really doing anything.
Yeah,
right?
they've finished the trial.
The trial's basically finished. They're just watchful waiting until everyone on the trial dies.
Yeah, they actually reported a year ago, or just over a year ago, that they were one event away from getting to the point where they can report out the trial, and then they haven't reported out the trial.
Yeah, and so what else are their operations? Where else is this money, $8 million a quarter, going?
Salaries?
Yeah.
Pretty much salaries. And then
Gosh.
I know a lot of it goes to their CRO, which, I mean, I guess they're still collecting data, checking to see if someone's dead in the trial.
Yeah, that's a good gig if you can get it too.
Yeah. And, the CEO used to own a part of that CRO through Toucan Capital. And so it was a lot of self-dealing going on. This is just such a messy company. The SEC is continuing to investigate them. They have no money, but yet they still find people willing to give them money, but with such horrible, horrible terms for the company. For example, the company right now has about 447 million common shares outstanding. I think that's about double than what they had last year. But then they also have an additional 640 million or so options and warrants, etc. So they're at over 1 billion shares fully diluted right now.
Well, those warrants aren't worth the paper they're written on, I imagine.
No, some of them have some of them were like at the money strike prices.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they have anti-dilutive provisions in them?
I'm sure some of them do.
Oh gosh, the so-called death spiral financing. But that's the thing. That's how you have to raise money when you're Northwest Bio is you may have a deal where your investors cannot lose money. And then they'll give you money. As long as you can keep the doors open to the place and they can unload at some point.
Yeah, I mean, look, they recently they got like $1 million loan from someone at a 15% discount. So they would put $1 million net to the company, but they owed 1.15 million on that, and it was only an 18-month loan. So they're paying like mafia prices. They're paying the VIG. And I actually have their cap table right here. So they have a short-term mortgage loan that's due in November. The interest rate is 12%. So basically triple what all of us would have to pay on any mortgage.
Subprime.
Slightly subprime. No, it's just a joke. I mean, they're just trying to keep the lights on as long as possible. Just as they should make either a series or a movie on Tesla, they should do the same thing with Northwest Bio, with Amy Poehler as Linda Powers, the CEO. I think that would be perfect.
Oh, that'd be pretty fun.
Oh, totally.
That's a good idea for a movie in general, just like crazy drug company crooks. I think I could write that script.
The phase 3 has been going on for over a decade. I think it's like literally 12 years, and they still haven't reported it out.
Do you think these guys even show up to the office every day? I mean, they probably just, they show up, once a quarter to like put the books together, and that's about it.
No, I mean, they're raising money. They're just trying to find investors. I mean, because they're constantly burning money. They have debt due in 9 days from now. So they need to get cash to cover anything that's due, and then cover operations, and also negotiate, like, if they don't want to pay the debt in cash, to give these people a ton of either preferred stock or warrants or whatever. So they just have to like hustle the whole time. It's all purely financial engineering is what they're trying to do.
Gosh, I would love to be in one of those meetings just to get an idea of what they're saying, right? What do they actually say to people to convince them this is a good idea?
Oh, they just make the terms like, how can you refuse it? Like, oh, we'll have money in 6 months, so you'll get a 15% return. I mean, where can you beat that? I mean, I remember these guys, they had an investor exercise warrants, and they just issued the investor new warrants. Like, oh, you used up your warrants? Here's some more. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So there are people out there who are able to make money, because there's the schmucks who keep buying this stock, like these retail people who know literally nothing about.
And I'm sure we'll be contacting us after this podcast.
Oh, dude, they're nuts. It's like them and Mankind investors are like the craziest within the healthcare sector.
Yes.
But they bid up the stock to like, so right now it's trading around 20 cents. They'll go to like 40 cents. So all these like hucksters who are funding this company and getting these outrageous warrant deals, they're making money. It's like, hey, I have like 25 cent strike price on my warrants. Okay, I'll exercise them. The stock's at 40 cents, make a ton of money, and I'll give them some more money. And it'll happen again. Rinse, repeat.
All right. Well, yes, a little bit of levity in every earnings season.
Yes.
Is reading the Northwest Bio Q.
Dude, it's hilarious.
It's, well, the people like us that have no lives.
Well, yeah. So, anyhow. So on the other end of the spectrum, and the world, Beigene recently had a dual listed in Hong Kong, raised about a little more than $900 million US. So, China's definitely like a hopping biotech market now that they've allowed non-revenue or pre-revenue companies to list.
Yes, that's the big development here. So the Hong Kong Exchange recently said, because historically they said that you had to have revenue to list there. They said, okay, well, biotech companies can list your pre-revenue and sort of open up the floodgates, which are, of course, historically, valuations in China have been on the high side, and that seems to be what we're still seeing. I mean, Beigene just did a $1 billion raise in Hong Kong, right? And pushed their valuation now at $9 billion. Is that right? And so this is, to put this in perspective, I mean, I think they're a fine company. It definitely looks like they've got some active drugs, but what they've got is like a PD-1 and a PARP.
Oh, because we need more of those.
And a BTK. So it's all sort of second, third, fourth string stuff.
Or
and
fifth or sixth.
It's all in in the clinic right now. Nothing is commercial yet. But I don't know, maybe they'll make a ton of money. And so we're seeing more and more interest in the Chinese market, and because of this and because of there's been a breakneck pace of reforms in China in the sort of biotech and pharma space recently, which I think has spurred a lot of interest in investing in that country, right? So one thing that I don't think should have to ever be said about China, but it is a centrally planned economy. And so unlike the US, they can sort of just by fiat change how their entire system works, right? And that's what's happening right now for drugs, right? The wait time for approval there, and this is like the regulatory thing. So in the US, for a PDUFA, it's like 1 year, right? 2 months for a response from the FDA, and then 10 months after that. In China, it used to be 5 years.
Whoa.
And approval for a clinical trial authorization was similar. So just to start doing clinical trials could take 3 to 5 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
And part of the reason for this was that there was something like 60 reviewers at the Chinese FDA, like reviewing thousands and thousands and thousands of applications every year. So they've managed to change that. They've hired a whole bunch more people. They've got a whole bunch more reviewers. And they've actually, a big part of the problem was there were tons of generic applications in China because there's thousands and thousands of generic companies there, right? And this is not even including the traditional Chinese medicine channel there too, which is totally separate, but also is taking up all these reviewers' times. Now, if you want to get a generic done there, it's a different pathway similar to what the US and everyone else in the world uses. So it was a recent audit, and take some of these with a bit of a grain of salt, because this is the state council sort of describing how well they're doing and changing things. But for drugs, the wait time for an NDA was down to around 60 days.
Oh, wow.
And for a clinical trial authorization was like 39 days.
Wait, so an NDA from filing and the whole review was 60 days?
Yes, for I should say for a priority review, which
Wow.
which a lot of stuff in China qualifies for priority review. It's anything that's it's innovative and out of China, anything coming from that's already approved somewhere else in the world, and so most things that you would want to get approved quickly, like Herceptin or something like that, even though that's already approved there, would qualify for a priority review.
Okay, great.
And so it's changing very quickly. They also just, as of December, laid out some of the basics for cell-based therapies getting approval though. So they are now regulated as drugs. And so this just happened in December of 2017. And before that, there was no pathway for approval for these. It was no sort of well-defined way to get to the market and be regulated. And so now they said that they are drugs. And yeah, to spur development there, you only have to do 2 clinical trials. You just have to do one sort of exploratory safety one and then one for efficacy. And that's that. And I think this is also an effort by the government there to sort of catch up, right? Mm-hmm. The U.S. is approving CAR-Ts, and they want to be part of that too. And so they're going to sort of stimulate that aspect of the economy. A complicating detail about CAR-T in China is that, or any cell therapies, is that you cannot take the cells of Chinese citizens outside of the country, because that is considered genetic theft, right? So there is no way, like you couldn't use... Like the Kite and Juno and all these guys have a Chinese presence, but they have to sort of get it set up on the ground there, because you cannot take cells and ship them to California and process them and ship them back. That's illegal.
Can you process them in Taiwan?
They're getting real hairy there, Max. I'm not qualified to answer that question. Yeah, and it's because of this, because of the focus on promoting this industry, there are just hundreds and hundreds of CAR-T companies in China, most of which are of very low quality, most of which are just like, yeah, we're making a CAR-T. And So you'll look at the sheer number. I believe the number of CAR T trials in China outnumbers the ones in the U.S. 2-1. I think there's definitely a market there. I think it's smaller than people think, considering the rates of hematological indications are smaller in China, just for various reasons, demographic reasons. But there's definitely a market there, and I definitely think there is going to be some winners and losers in the CAR T space there. And I basically, whoever can, at this point, most of the companies involved are looking like losers because they have like real no manufacturing presence. They have nothing except a construct in hand, right? And who knows how good that is. But some people are going to be successful. Just to reiterate my point, this is all, like I said, been changing just at a incredibly fast pace.
A breakneck pace.
A breakneck pace. I mean, within the past year, China has changed the amount of data exclusivity, which is one of the primary forms of IP protection there, twice. They increased it for orphan drugs, and then they decreased it for orphan drugs again. Set up a different sort of system for how orphan drugs are going to be different for their data exclusivity. They jacked biologics up to 12 years. Innovative drugs are 6 years. And so all these things have been sort of bouncing around because that's how they do this sort of thing. They've decided that they want to sort of stimulate this aspect of the economy, so they're going to do it, right, one way or another, and they are going to play around with the regulations until something works, I guess.
Are there also like complicating factors with the provincial regulations?
Yes. I mean, the whole system is incredibly complicated. None the least because for the payers, the whole payer system there, if you look at it from a 1,000-yard view, it looks simple. Everyone gets state insurance, and there's very little sort of private insurance in China. Oh, that might be changing. Like 95% of people are covered by the state insurance schemes. It gets really complex when you sort of break it down that each one of those schemes, there's 3 different ones. One for urbanites, one for urban workers, and one for basically peasants. And they're all administered differently by the individual provinces. And so although there's a list of drugs that have to be reimbursed in China, it's first off a cash pay market where you have to pay up front and then ask for reimbursement later. And the reimbursement varies dramatically based on which province you're in and their ability to pay. Because like often they'll say it has to be reimbursed and they just don't have the money, so they just don't reimburse. So this has driven a lot of the savings of people in China to be dedicated towards, future medical expenses. Even though the prices there are a lot lower than we see here in the U.S., something like 14% of families experience a unforeseen medical expense in any given year that can just wipe out thousands of dollars. And so it's complicated to say the least. And not to mention, don't let me get even into the distributor network. Their network for distributors is insane, with thousands of individual distributor companies in a multi-tiered model where you have distributors distributing to other distributors who distribute to other distributors, and take then the like 5,000 different generics companies involved, and it's just crazy. And then the hospitals themselves, there's been a trend that the government is very strongly trying to fix right now, where because the hospitals are paid like a flat amount, right? And so they will get reimbursed for like giving a drug or something like that. And because of that, they're incentivized to basically buy the cheapest drug possible, right? So they're shopping around through all these distributors to find the cheapest drug for everything that they have possible. And as happens, you get some low quality drugs into the system. No one can track any of this stuff because it's so crazy. And there has been some very prominent counterfeit drug cases.
Didn't the head of their FDA get executed like 10 years ago?
Yeah, he was executed for taking bribes. Yeah, so that's China. It's complicated. This is the reason why people have moved in there and haven't succeeded before. But I think what a lot of people like right now is they're seeing a move towards sort of consolidation of their system into something that resembles what's going on in like the US and Europe.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully they don't take any steps back. But, it is a huge market, lots of opportunity there. And, our friend Brad Longcar recently launched a China biotech ETF fund, and we wish him the best of luck.
Yes.
So, anything else do you want to talk about? Because I'm out.
All right. I think I'm done too.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe to Armchair Healthcare, and please review us on iTunes.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Our theme music is by Hazar.